Good morning, everyone. Welcome, Harbeen ma'am. She's here. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And when we talk about Women's Day this particular year, the theme is give to gain. So you give others and then you gain for not only for yourself, you gain for the entire community. But that is what I think every woman does. When a woman rises, she does not rise herself. She pulls along her entire community. And that is a gift a woman has. And who better to talk about it other than Dr. Harbeen Arora Rai? She's created an entire community for us. We have Wiki, we have All, we have G100, we have Mother's Army, and now we have She Economy. All these for women all around the world, not only in any particular corner of the world, it's all around the world. And today we are here. It's actually because Dr. Harbeen Arora Rai has created this platform for us. So thank you so much, Sis Harbeen, for doing this for all of us, for the women in general. So we would start the session with a few words from you today.
With my great love and affection, sisters, thank you so much for this opportunity. Together, we keep co creating and we keep weaving solidarity. And our togetherness is the strength, is the Shakti that we all count on. Yesterday in G100, I said we are building 100-lane highway, and with the Mission Million, we are building a 1,000,000-lane highway where each one of you is the agency of that creation, is the carrier of that energy, is the embodiment of Shakti that we all look upon. So, yes, just like you offer the love and affection to me, sending energy and recognition my way, I'd like to do the same for each one of you, sending you my love, affection, support, and recognition for the Shakti that you are. And together in Shakti Bandhan, there is no obstacle that we cannot overcome. There is no mission that we cannot achieve. Together, whatever our hearts are set on, whatever our hands are in service of, and whatever we take as a focus in our head and work towards is, my gosh, the sky is the limit for what all we can achieve. Of course, we will bridge all kinds of gaps. Of course, we will co-create the world that we want to live in. Of course, it will be a safer world for women. And of course, it will be a place where we feel well, where we feel we belong, and where we feel that our feminine leadership is honored, respected, and looked upon by everyone. And together we are making that way. We are paving that path, and every day is progress, just like this moment is progress. And you have taken that step by your participation, by your presence, by your leadership to make sure that you sow that seed today, which will, by force of nature, blossom tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sis. It's actually a pleasure and honor to have you with us in this session. And it's so inspiring. That particular speech, small, few words you always speak, is inspiring to all of us, to all the women around the world. Thank you once again. While you be with us, we're going to start our session this morning. I just want to quote a few words for International Women's Day. This is from the UN Women Executive Director, Bahos. She says it's a day to celebrate every voice raised, every barrier broken, every right claimed by women and girls around the world. We have never been so close to achieving gender equality and never closer to losing it. See, that's a paradox. Today, stronger laws exist on domestic violence. More girls are in school than ever before. Women's movements are more connected, more visible, and more crucial than ever before. And yet, this is also a moment of contradiction. Violence is rising, including online. Backlash is organized and well resourced. Rights are being reversed in real time and at unprecedented speed. Impunity is spreading in homes, online, and in conflicts. When we talk about rights, when we talk about justice, it's there in pen and paper. Is it really there for us? Are we able or are we capable enough to fight for it? Or are we even aware of our rights? So that is the main thing. Moving on from there to have a discussion on that, we have these two beautiful ladies with us today, Paromita Banerjee and Surucchi Khubchandani. Paromita Banerjee is a textile and fashion designer based out of Kolkata, a batch of 2001 from the National Institute of Design. She started out as an entrepreneur in 2009. In a family of lawyers, geologists, astrophysicists, and corporates, she's the first woman in her family to venture out into business and has primarily learnt on the job. With over 20 years experience in the field of craft design and textiles, her brand, Paromita Banerjee, works with her clusters across India, innovating fabrics at the loom stage. She has been a regular at the Lakme Fashion Week and the India Fashion Week under the Fashion Design Council of India since 2009. The brand has represented India on a number of occasions at international fashion events, significant being representing India at the United Nations Fashion for the Development and Peace show in Shanghai. Congratulations, it's a big thing, it's a huge thing. And of course, we have Shuruchi. Shuruchi Khubchandani is a sustainability strategist bridging creative economies and climate action as founder of Third Soil, an impact consultancy with clients like Air India. She aligns global frameworks with grassroots knowledge through evidence based research. Certified in corporate sustainability, Harvard Extension 2026, and Management of Social Initiatives, IIM Kozhikode 2024. Shuruchi brings 15 plus years experience leading projects, creative dignities, crafts climate, the voice of fashion, Yes Bank, CSR on crafts, and Ministry of Textiles cluster documentation. An art historian by training from MSU Baroda, she also lectures at NID Bhopal and previously at Pearl Academy and College of Art, Delhi. Yeah, both of you actually need a thank you. So young and you've done so much in such a short while. So at the outset, wishing you all the best for a bright and a prosperous journey ahead. Now, before we move on to the questions, I would first like to know about your brand names. Why, Paromita, you chose your name as your brand name, which is actually quite rare, I think. And Shuruchi will explain why you particularly took up that particular name, Third Soil, as your brand name. So whoever wants to take it first.
Well, it was simply because that was the most easiest thing to do. 15 years back, that was the simplest thing to do. Just stick to your name and that's it. And then the cycle turned. But yeah, I just took the easy way out, stuck to my name, didn't think much. And here I am.
And you, Shuruchi, Third Soil, why?
Yeah, so I was very clear last year when I set up the consultancy that I don't want it to be my name. And, with so much of reading, researching, writing, I got very inspired, by Jill Clements. It's an urban landscapist, and there's Third Landscape. That's the work, that they build up. And it's about, creating a liminal hybrid space for dialogue, for research, and for, tailor-made approach for a sector like crafts, where there are so many dynamisms, nuances, where it's very difficult to tread a linear path. So I felt, and when I started speaking about impact calculation or assessment, the frameworks already exist, the matrix already exists, but there is no establishment for it in terms of or assertion of it within the sector. So I wanted to create a space that is very liminal, that is fluid, that speaks to the enterprises that I would want to offer my services for. And I truly believe in the soil to soil philosophy, that we come from soil and we go back to soil, and only when we look at product systems from that perspective will the loop close. So hence Third Soil.
Nicely, beautifully explained. Can we just start off with the theme give to gain? Both of you are giving your time, your ideas, your innovations, your creativity, and ultimately you're gaining something from that process. So how satisfying is it? Are you really gaining something? And if you are, what is it that you are gaining? Who wants to take it first? Paramita?
When I started a few decades ago, the idea was not ingrained in me as to how big my networking would eventually be. It was really on the job that I learned that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But what I was really focused on was while I was still a student at NID, we were always, ingrained with the idea that there were crafts around us that we could research, we could fall back on. And heritage and sustainability subconsciously became part of our being. Really. And it was much later when I realized that, I would want to set up my own firm. It was a given that I would go get back to the craft community for my inspiration, for my knowledge bank, and then take it up from there. So, the fact that I'm actually giving had not really come about then. It was just naturally flowing and very subconsciously one thing led to the other. And what was most satisfying for me right from the start was the fact that here in our backyard, every few kilometers you go away from city landscape, you would find a different kind of a craft or a artisanry waiting for you. And that became the identity of the place, of the region. And it was the most obvious thing, because in a rural livelihood where artists or artisans or craftsmen are part of the repertoire, they don't think too much. It's just what they've grown up doing, generation after generation. I think that really caught on to me. One thing really led to the other, and somehow the ball rolled and it became the diaspora that it has now, really. Yeah.
Shuruchi, is it the same for you, or you were, more focused? You knew you're going to do that.
No, so as you read, I started as an art historian in training and a journalism background. Before that, I started as an art writer in the art fraternity. And after 3 years of working, within the sector, I felt, so it's also about giving to yourself, right? First, for fulfilling your own purpose before you are in the position to give to others. And I felt, all what I was doing was very superficial and there was no real critique or no real giving. But then, when I got more exposed to crafts, I was offered this beautiful role by Yes Bank to lead their cultural portfolio. And I said, crafts is a sector that I would like to give to, and not only me, but, I started using bank CSR money at that point of time, which they were only using for education and health. Those are the more stereotypical conventional routes. So I said, but we could also look at that. So they wanted numbers, and it was really about, cracking that framework that would work for a corporate, but also work for the grassroots organizations that I tried to represent in the bank. So that idea, I felt, for me, I just felt even if you're working with 1,000 women artisans, and if I was able to create some contribute, in a liminal or a very minute way also to 550 livelihoods over my span, I think that would be a purpose well solved. And so I found a pathway to look at it. And for me, sustainability at that point of time only meant economic sustainability, working within a bank, that you're able to create livelihood propositions for them. But over a period of time, when I started traveling to more clusters for documentation projects, and then I was with the Voice of Fashion in my last job and I did the sustainability report. And it's a beautiful piece of work where, I started talking to brands, but also started talking to artisans. And, for them, the idea of purpose of sustainability was very different. And it started, I started looking at it socially also, culturally also, environmentally also. So it was really about, unraveling your own third eye or Shakti to really understand aap de kya sakte ho? What is that you can give back? So for me, Third Soil became that tool, that engine, and that vehicle that I would like to continue and persist with, to understand it holistically for the sector that I'm committed to.
Right. As you were both working with craftsmen and artisans, so when you're working with women artisans, then the topic comes about fair wages. It's very often that women are not given the fair wage they so very deserve. And it's not only here, it's in all the sectors. Wherever you go, that is one particular thing where women are not given, they're denied, particularly maybe purposely, I don't know how and why. But so how you go about that when you're working with a women craftsmen? Do you make it a point that they deserve, and they should get the fair wages, which they should be given and often denied? And also by doing that, do you at some point of time, how do you empower the women, because you are giving them a chance to earn their own means, to earn their own livelihood? Very often there are women through these kind of creative pursuits you young designers are coming up with now, they find a source of livelihood not only for themselves, for the entire family as such. So I would like to know your thoughts on that.
I want to digress slightly and go on to the threads of our past, where initially when craft communities were built up, it was built on a basic give and take, it was built on a relation of interdependence, where the entire craft community would benefit from each other. And it was a more family occupation where a certain craft community, the entire family would cooperate and come up with their livelihood, which could be anything from wood, mask making, or paintings, or potachitra, etc., or weaving for that matter. It was only much later, I think, with organizations like NGOs like Seva, which was started in Gujarat, or Fab India, which was started in 1960s, or offhand I could remember Sasha in Calcutta, which is almost 40 years old, that the entire diaspora changed, where women were given more livelihood and financial independent occupations. And I think that's how the empowerment really came about. But initially, every craft sector always depended on a certain give and take within the community, a certain barter system within the community. There was no strict division of labor, really. But I could really see in my community when I started working with the weavers, the women were not weaving primarily, but they were always a backbone of the community. You know, very simple things like they would help set up the loom, or they would help starch the yarns, etc. This is going to the very minute aspects, really. But because women have always been a part of the domestic livelihood, earning was always secondary. But what we have tried to do over the years is identify what is it that they've really been good at. Like, for example, embroidery, like for example applique, and then identify which are the clusters that actually can be women empowered, and then we identify them and give them work based on it. But initially, unfortunately, there was no basic division in terms of men and women. It was all part of a community, really.
More you travel to the clusters, you see that, they are on the back side of the loom, they are spinning or they are warping, pairing the bobbins, things like that. But that's one part of it, a large part of work that I've researched and I've traveled to clusters, it is for a very different reason where, wage structure is just one part of that entire system. When I look at a craft, I do not look at the product, from a product point of view. I look at it from a system point of view where they exist within a bioregion. And then, when you, let's say, look at the pastoral communities or the Himalayan belt or, the Rabha community, which is the northeastern community, you'll see these are very women dominated centers. Now, if you, of course, like Paromita, I would like to take you a little back towards, let's say post-independence, where there was a very successful cooperative model structure in India, where, the artisans themselves, from at whatever levels, they were actually tied up in groups, where they had representation power. And that continued through, let's say, organizations like Seva. And later on, the idea of producer companies also came in with, let's say industry in Bangalore. It has a successful producer company called Greencraft. Now there are 4,000 women who are working within Greencraft where, they own equity within it. So, only talking about women welfare in form of wage would not be, I think, a comprehensive or an inclusive lens. It's also important to look at, structures like Ranga Sutra for that matter, who work in 8 states. A large part of their work is in Rajasthan. So I start looking at best practices, where these could be blueprint for other clusters to follow. And of course, replication is a difficult ask. But I also see that a lot of these beautiful models like collectives as well, where we are not, let's say, talking about 4,000 women, but 12 women in a collective called Nurul in Arunachal Pradesh. They've come up and they work, because we're talking about give and take, they work within a regenerative sense of building leadership from the community, creating new models of production within the community, let's say using regenerative materials like yak hair within that biome, right? So there is a lot of reciprocation within that environment for the material, for its own cultivation, taking it forward through R&D. And this is all women-led. All the examples that I've given you. Coming back to, Bikaner here. So such interesting models, of cooperatives still exist. Producer companies are successful. Collectives, of course, are more dynamic models where, women are able to look after their own tribe, own kin, own, community in a very, very robust manner. Ranga Sutra is an interesting model to say because, around 200 women own the shares of the company today. And, they have a crazy turnover of around, 36 crore every year. Now imagine, the percolation that happens. And, you rightly said in the beginning, it's, it also, of course, money is a very important denominator. And within producer companies, there is a payment or a fee that they derive every 2 months. That happens as well. But also, the equity, when it rests with them, let's say if 200 women are part of this producer company today, it also inspires another 200, 400. So there is a multiplier effect over a period of time where, more women through that sense of belonging, through the sense of inspiration when they say the younger or the older leaders in their producer cooperative or company. So I think there is a great transformation or replication of the good practices that happens within these subsectors and sub leadership models, especially when we are talking about women. So I think that's very, very important. And you'll also see, over a period of time, and that is the reason I believe impact assessment is a very critical way to look at any kind of production model, because like, corporates have been following ESG. So this governance is very important when you talk about the social component, which is the second component. So I think they are very interlinked, and we have to talk about governance in the craft economy in a very smart manner, because a lot of good is also happening. When you only talk about wage, you are looking, I feel the only benchmark you can refer to is the state government wage board, right? Which, let's say for Bengal, Paromita, correct me, it's 7,000 rupees for a semi-skilled labor for a period of month. Yeah, but when a woman works in a society, she doesn't work for the 30 days of the month. She would like to work in a more flexible manner. She would also like to take a break in between to go and fend for her family. They also work in a community, in a courtyard of a family where, they understand, जैसे कहते हैं अगर राजस्थान में हो तो आप 7 बार और they are actually not there for those 30 days or for the 7 weeks. So 7 days in a week. So they need that flexibility. So we have tailor-made models like cooperatives, like producer companies, like collectives, where women can seek for each other, they can support each other. So either there is a piece rate, which is a currency within these subsectors, but also importantly, one has to understand what is the earning potential here. And when you start sitting with these models or these enterprises, there is a way they do it. And it's quite important to also look at those dynamics. Also, the indicators of prosperity. If there is a continued wage or a continued work that comes their way through being part of a formal cooperative or a collective, it also means that over a period of time, her child will continue going to the school, will continue having stationery and healthcare service, right? So I think more than weight, it's also important to look at this, wellness circle that gets created.
What I want to mention is, Suruchi, you've brilliantly encapsulated the entire dynamics, really. But women in a rural craft sector or rural sector or community does not always have the option of, earning primarily. It's always been, a balance between domestic and the earning part of it, always. Yeah. And there's always the woman stuck in a dichotomy of am I just going to be earning, or am I going to finish the household work and then get on to earning something? But having said that, earning is not a barometer at all. But at the end of it, money also gets the world rolling, really. And primarily, if you look at it, most women in a community that we are well versed with have not been given the opportunity to earn as much. They have not been given the opportunity to be a part of the cooperatives. It's only been, I think, for the past 20 years that it has. But if you notice, they would still go to the cooperative after finishing the household work, or go back and finish it, or maybe drop the kids to school and then go back. So the onus of the entirety of the work that we know of really rests on the women. And at the end of it, if the earning is what they get at the end of it as a reward, I think so be it. But that, I think, is a real dichotomy that we are struggling with, isn't it? We're never the forerunners of earning. We always have to balance it out with multiple other things. Yeah. And that has always struck me as a given in a rural sector. But if we call ourselves urban and modern, even though the word itself has so many connotations now, what are we doing? Aren't we also juggling domestic and professional all the time? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the cooperatives that have actually put the women clusters together have really made them more empowered and liberated, where they know that at the end of it, that's what they're working towards, or that is what a part of their day or 50% of the day is going to be. Either they're going to a sanstha for knitting, or they're going to a sanstha for basket weaving, etc. So it's like going to office space. Yeah. So I think that has been regulated and brilliant, but I would still find most of us juggling in an urban and rural setup.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the reason, I'm always tracking these best practices. And that's why I said in the beginning, the replication of it is a big ask.
Yeah.
And, interestingly, what's happened is that I feel a lot of social enterprises And, I've also seen a pattern, they are women led.
Yeah.
And, for them to be able to create this kind of blueprint. So I'll give you an example of Kadam Heart because I've been to some of their clusters.
Yes.
They
Beautiful.
work
Yeah.
now, they work with regenerative materials. So, where we talk about the idea of give and take, it's not only giving the human or raising the human capital, but also working with the natural capital from that region. So they map the natural capital, then bring in the human capital, map that, link it together. And these are women. Now, as a women led organization, I think it's also, again, a replication and a multiplier effect, that goes far beyond for them to also go to other states. They do a lot of work in Bengal. So, Paramita, you would also know your
Absolutely. Yes.
footpaths or the
Miss Nath.
rooftops. Also, Northeast, when you look at looms of Ladakh, who are working with
Yeah.
600
Absolutely.
artisans now, they started with 150 around 5 years back. Where there are board meetings that happen, elections that happen every year, and board meetings. Of course, the idea of empowerment, the idea of enablement comes through these various instruments that are instituted within these structures, which are very, very women positive, I would say. Now, interestingly, I also feel that, we don't even have to look at ESG every time. Industry came up with something like called ECG, which is equity, climate, gender. So we have to also create our own frameworks within the craft sector, which suits the dynamics and the requirements and the feedback loops of the people who represent it, because women constitute a very big part of not only the craft sector, but also the garment sector.
Question which came to my mind listening to you right now. So, if it's a woman-led organization, be it a cooperative, be it any social enterprise, is it more advantageous if a woman is there at the top? So, she would understand more the need of the craftsmen or the people who are working under her.
I think if I could say my little two pence, I think it's the EQ quotient, which is always working for most organizations. It's always the EQ, how much of the heart is a part of your organization, how much of your heart is part of the cooperative or cooperation, simply because women have much more than that. And, thank God for that. We just have much more EQ than all your IQs and all your
Absolutely.
whatever Qs put together. And I think it's just that determining factor, you know and well done to us, really. Yeah, the EQ, I think. Yeah,
I totally agree.
and also that whole thing of looking out for each other. I've always felt that, like
That
in
sisterhood.
organizations, the sisterhood. Like, for example, I always end up going back to a case study of Seva, because we work with them in Kutch and Gujarat. It was started at a time, I think 1972, by Ila Bhatt, of the idea of not helping women, partnering with them. You're not doing us a favor, you're partnering with us so that we can help you in turn. That was, I think, the basic premise. And when I was reading up, because there's a beautiful book on Seva, I have it somewhere in the office. It started from the Textile Labor Association that was started in Gandhi's time in 1918, and the women wing came out and sort of revolted or put things together, and then Seva started. And it was primarily to partner with women, give them benefits that they could find empowering, and involve them in banking and financials, or develop that entire what's the word, an organized economy. So that, I find that as a case study to be fascinating. Women looking out for each other, sisterhood, and I think Seva had a brilliant example. So Fab India's founded by Bim and John Bissell, right, 1960s.
Yeah.
That was also the basic premise, that can we partner with the artisans and help them help us. We run our organization, but it would be them as the forerunners of generating more business for us. I find that very fascinating.
Very concept of giving to gain, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Suruchi, I have a question in my mind. When
Yes.
you're working with designs and colors and all these kind of different aspects, here, do you think it comes naturally to a woman, the idea of design, the craft, the color, or it's more natural to a man, or it is equal to both? This is a very personal question.
For me personally, I feel it comes to both the gender. Okay, like you have to, because these clusters are so they're I think it's a universe of pluriverse. There's so much happening, unfolding in different clusters. So it's very difficult to, say an umbrella statement and work our way with it. No, it doesn't work like that. And I think that's the beauty of it. For me, if you ask me, it's both the genders. doing extremely astute, not only design, but also color chemistry work with the craft, with the art of, with making.
Yeah, I would agree. I would really agree. It's always been about how what you've seen around you. And that I think is not restricted to a man or a woman. It's really what you've seen around you, how you've grown up, what your setup has been. That subconsciously creeps in into our aesthetics. Good, bad aesthetics is different, but the basic aesthetics, I think, is equal to both. It's how we visualize, I think, comes much later.
And Dr. Sharmista, this is such a brilliant question because,
Yep.
it also, I think, breaks the gender stereotypes
Yes,
with
yeah.
aesthetics. That I think children or, the younger ones, and even, I mean, I'm not even talking about rural communities, but in urban demography, that we have constructed while we are raising boys versus girls. And I think, there's so much to learn from the ground where this kind of stereotyping is really not operational.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd like to quote Bapaditya Bishaj when we were talking to him once in an interview. So when he decided to go for studying designing, so he told me his father asked him, "You want to be a darzi? You want to be sit in the para with a sewing machine, and you want to be the para darzi?" So that is the stereotype which was there, right? So we are breaking it now. It's really wonderful to see, that we've broken so many barriers in so many years actually, but I'm sure going to break even more. Shumana, you've been sitting quietly. Any questions you want to ask?
Well, the biggest benefactor of these talks is me because I always sit with a diary.
I've been noticing you taking notes.
Yes, I am always taking notes. But I love the part where you said that for women when they come to the economy, it's always they have to balance their domestic and the earning side of it because somehow we're not very comfortable with the idea that the man can also do both and the women can also do both. I have some friends, very interesting. They come from the west and majorly southern parts of India, from villages where their families are into crafts and they have seen their previous generations being very involved in. It's like a way of life. Like whatever they did as part of their cooperatives, it was part of running their families as well. And now these people, my friends, they have moved to the urban centers for tech industry. And now they're saying people who've gotten married 4 or 5 years ago, that it's no longer like integrated into their lifestyle anymore. Their work is a full-time job. Their family life is one full-time job, being a wife or a husband, and now mother, new father. It's like they're running 3, 4 parallel lives. And now a lot of them are wishing they can go back to the villages and live that life. So that for me is I don't know, I think it's great. And it comes from the work that you guys are doing. So I thank you for that. But one question I have is I've heard from a lot of people I've been hearing is based in Northeast that when women are involved in the process of weaving, or let's say in general, the entire process of craft creation, they tend to be more sustainable in their approaches, in how they deal with the raw materials, and how they deal with waste, and how they deal with keeping the leftovers for repurposing. Do you see that in your work in all parts of India?
Primarily, yes and no. And also, I think, Shona, this has been ingrained to us again by a very domestic setup. Like I've always remembered my grandmother and my mother always hoarding jam bottles, yeah, jam and ketchup bottles. It would always be stored. A jam bottle would stuff your biscuits later on, or would have your chanachur and your dalmut in the little. So that jugaad had always been part of our Indian repertoire of growing up, really. And so that also was the basic premise of sustainability, right? Because how are you not wasting and in turn you're generating, right? Right now, most products come in plastic bottles, but at one point they all came in glass bottles, which would last for years. So I still remember, in fact, we stuff our puffed rice in it at home, right? Like this
Absolutely.
big bottle of Horlicks, which would be almost a kilo, and a really nice handy glass bottle. It's almost 10 years old in my house. We stuff, what do we keep? We keep muri in it. We keep puffed rice in it. Yeah. And you seal it up and, we're good to go. So I think that was how the premise of women being sustainable really came about. In the weaving sector, most of the women I've worked with, especially Kutch for embroidery or Jamdani in Bengal, I just feel they are very intense with their raw materials because they don't want to waste simply because they've seen what less also is. Yeah, so I think that's how it really starts. The resources are very valuable to them, but I also feel it starts from the premise that women have come to the forefront of being employed much, not later, but just a few years back. I think that's how it really starts. It hasn't been a very old thing for us that we've been at the forefront of being employed or trying to earn our own livelihood, etc. So I think that's where it really starts. I could beg to differ, really.
Yeah, no, because you specifically spoke about Northeast. There are two communities that I've studied.
Not
Yeah, and so the Brokpas, which is the yak herding communities, and the Rabhas, which have woven for generations in Assam. Now, the indigenous communities that they've always had a very reciprocal relationship with their biome, and rightly so. So it's not only weaving, it's also foraging, so they work with the seasonal cycles. So let's say, they'll go for foraging different kind of fruits and substances, plants, for cooking, for herbs as well. So it's really, when they work with yak, they'll also, use the milk to make churpi, which is the cheese, the yak, milk cheese. So it's really, I think they continue holding to that kind of lifestyle in their everyday as well. So I do not think they've anyways digressed, even let's say now they have these plastic raincoats for children, instead of the yak hair raincoat that they were using, let's say a couple of years back, but they'll continue to have that one set. So though the industrial materials have reached the remotest corners of India, but the way they continue to create material relationships within their four walls, I think it's still very sustainable and still very frugal because they have seen less. They continue to see, I think, very, they live in modest homes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Raha, do you have any follow-up?
Well, yes, I mean, what you both said was actually right because Northeastern is matriarchal. Set up, things are a little bit different there because there it's women primarily. It's not only in the weaving or craftsmanship, it's the women primarily in all the sectors. They lead because that's how the society is in that part of the country. But apart from that, yes, when we are talking about craft side of it, I think it is one sector which really supports women a lot. And in the recent times, I think it is one sector which supports a lot of women. Many women are involved in it. And it's really heartening to see they're coming back from abroad and, participating and opening up their own workshop, their own cooperatives. And ultimately, you work to preserve your own heritage. When you talk about the crafts and the weave all different parts of the country, it's again coming back to our culture, our heritage, and preserving and for the future. So both of you, just wrapping it all up, when you're working on this particular sector, you're actually preserving your culture, your heritage. So how does it feel on that note?
Well, it feels fascinating simply because most of us, I think, in our line of work, we've set up businesses in India, but we've also seen the world. We've globally, we are quite well traveled now. And I think most of us, at least it happened in my case, when I was in Stockholm on a student exchange program, I suddenly realized the treasure, and that was when I was a 16 or 17-year-old. I suddenly realized the treasure trove that was there back home in India, you know. And that was when it struck me that, you know what, I'm going to be seeing more of the world, but it would always be something that I would want to get back home and set up. Nobody had taught me that this is what I'm supposed to do, but it just subconsciously happened because it's only when you're further away from your homeland or your cultural heritage or your collective heritage is when you realize what are the treasures that you're missing. And most of us, we mostly take our value systems and our resources for granted. But it's only when you're abroad or only when you're getting a bird's eye view perspective of your country is when you realize the treasure that it has. And I think that was primarily why I still hold on to whatever I do with whichever communities I work with. So I just find them very valuable. The terms of sustainability or dependence or this and that is quite on the back burner. But what really works for me is I just find everything around me, the skill sets very valuable, and I have this urge to protect it really. So that's the basic premise of how we've managed to do what we have really. Yeah, it's just that subconscious effort to protect the treasures around me. Yeah.
Shruti, I think you started off from there, right? You're an art historian. I mean, that is what historian records.
Yeah, records, but now very importantly, because we speak about future, it's about, also finding a language that can communicate, but also create value for this kind of work, which we call heritage or legacy. We have so many names for describing our intangible and tangible resources in the country. But, for me, environment has become a very, very important part of looking at it. So that is a lens that I do not want to digress from, because I think, again, it's a living system, right? The water of a particular river will, which is so mineral rich, will give that color to the kalamkari or the bela or the ajrak, right? And when the river perishes, the craft also gets compromised, but also it creates a huge impact on the livelihood of the community. We see that all crafts which have washing and dyeing element are around the rivers. That's how they've been birthed. Just one example. When we speak about, weaving using a natural fiber, they are all around, very rich, diverse biomes. But we do not speak about, those areas, right? And that's very important. So I feel we also now need a very scientific, value-based, impact-based matrix and approach to create this kind of, comparative advantage for this craft, this heritage in not only the domestic market, but also the global market. Because, unfortunately or fortunately, the matter of the fact is the international market really values it more than we do it domestically in terms of its authenticity, in terms of the price categories. And, Paramita, you can tell us more in terms of, because you are selling to these diverse buyers as well. So for me, talking about the carbon footprint, talking about the better practices, talking about, let's say, natural lives connected to the pollinator health becomes extremely integral to, how I would like to contribute to the work. Also, because we've spoken so much about seva here, looking at, and these are women who work within a household, while they're tending to the children. So if they're part of the care economy, while they're part of the craft economy as well. And, with increasing weather, it's becoming extremely difficult for them, in terms of poor ventilation or, working in very compromised infrastructural facilities, right? With very limited cooling apparatus at their reach. So Seva has done a study at looking at, workspace mapping, looking at heat maps within two buildings that they have access to. So I think we need that kind of approach to really safeguard what we have at our end, not only the product, but the people who carry this kind of, the maker skill to give life to the product. So that's my approach. It's a very system thinking approach. And I would like to quote, Janine Venues, who's the founder of Biomimicry, because I think whatever we've spoken to, she says one line, that we have to create conditions conducive to life. And when we do that, everything else will be taken care of. So I think in the work that we do, to take and to give. This should be, I think, one of our North Stars.
And Sarva Dharma also, we end up missing out because I think right now we are also stuck in this dichotomy of religion and region and individuality and not community. I think most of these organizations started with the basic premise of Sarva Dharma, integrating all kinds of faith and people, and also khadi. Khadi not as a fabric, but khadi more as a term of self-reliance and local employment, which we seem to have really forgotten because, most companies are VC funded now. So we end up looking at a very macro level of things. But it's only when we go micro into the rural or into where the value systems or the resources are coming from, we end up forgetting most of these. Yeah. So Sarva Dharma.
Rightly so. I mean, that is just the note to end this beautiful session we had. It was lovely actually talking to you. Yeah.
I have one small question if I could ask. How does it feel for both of you to be professionals in today's economy who are irreplaceable by AI?
Wow, brilliant. It's just that I've always had a straight spine, yeah. I've always had a great head on my shoulder kind of a situation. And I think it really feels very empowered because I just feel there would be one industry, the AI would not be able to replace us because EQ would be something that will never be replaced. Like I said, I think EQ guides most of us women entrepreneurs. Our emotional quotient is so high that that'll never be replaced. And thank God for that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. And Shiruchi, you also too think that?
I'm so worried about the other sectors and AI's repercussion on it that I feel I really haven't taken a moment. I know that I'm irreplaceable by AI, but I also feel there's so much to learn from tech. And, I sit in these circles where there's so much discussion around, AI, oh my God, the kind of impact it's going to have on other sectors. So I think I have a very macro view on it. And yeah, I haven't really given it so much thought when it comes to me, because inherently I know, I think the kind of work that we are doing will be irreplaceable. So thank God for that. But, for me, I'm very worried about the world, to be honest. So I can't, I don't keep it to myself. It's really a larger.
And it's very liberating, the power that you hold within yourself to be able to reach out and touch lives in our little small way. I think that is very liberating. I think that's how most of us have been able to continue and be at it. It just feels very liberating what we are able to achieve, in our own little way.
Absolutely. Thank you all of you for joining in, actually. And thank you to beautiful ladies for participating and joining our session. So
Thank you.
And wishing all of us actually all the best.
Yeah.
And long live women power.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharmista, Sumanna. You thought of it and you thought of us. And I think you've posed some questions which, some parts of it, I've never kind of, revolved my brain around it. And it's always fun to, have that curveball thrown at you. And
Thanks so much.
Thank you.